All right. Thank you for being here. Andrew Pearson, writer, traveler, marketer, and other things. How do you see AI different than people?
So, I'm actually run a software consulting company, and I work in Macau, Hong Kong, Asia. We do have a client in the US, but it's an interesting field because the casino industry is a very customer centric industry, obviously. And in many ways, they've got a lot of money to develop customer intelligence and personalization marketing. So in Macau, they kind of went a little step further and they started using AI to basically understand who the higher worth gamblers are. So they would basically do a screenshot of the gambler's face, and these were all for the gamblers who weren't giving their cards, so they wanted to be basically anonymous. So what they were doing was they were capturing the face image and then also the gaming play. So baccarat's a huge game in Macau, and basically baccarat's a very simple game. In I don't know, it's not played in America quite as much as something like baccarat. I mean, something like blackjack. But in Asia, it's a huge game, and basically you've got three options. You've got one side is called banker, the other side is called player, and then there's a third one where the two hands come up and will be tied. So it's similar to blackjack in that you're dealt two cards. The other player is dealt two cards, and then in some situations there will be a third card dealt. But what they found in Macau interesting was they could look at the gambler, and then the people who were playing the tie are actually gamblers that are worth more because they're losing more. So if as you know, with blackjack, to get an 8 and an 8 to come up at the same time, and then, or let's say to get the two hands that come up to equal the same amount of numbers is not easy. So if it does come up, you do make quite a bit of money, but every time you play it, the house is taking a bigger piece of the edge. So Macau was like, oh, look, we can find out the people who are losing 10% on each hand, and those are much preferable to the ones who are only losing 1.5% on each hand. So then they started marketing to these players to get them to come back more often. And then they ran into the problem of the DCIJ, which is basically the gaming commission in Macau. And they basically said, you can't do that. You can only use facial recognition for security purposes. So now they're trying to figure out ways to get similar data in other ways. And, they've always, and I personally thought it was a very interesting use of AI, using the facial recognition aspect. So that was a pretty cool one. And then, we work with casinos doing things like, logistic regressions, trying to understand simple things like customer churn, RFM models, recency frequency monitoring, trying to figure out who your best customers are, and also trying to figure out who your most valuable customers are, and then trying to predict how to get them to come back more often, spend more money in the casino. And then we also implemented a system called patron value optimization, which is trying to optimize the value of the customer, and once again trying to squeeze out as much money as you could from them. So it's an interesting field. And then I'm doing a lot with generative AI now, which is has blown up beyond AI almost, which is kind of funny because AI was the buzzword of all buzzwords, as I called it several years ago, before it really did go off. But generative AI, I don't know, do you know much about the generative AI?
Just an AI that makes something, right? Or
yeah,
that
it's like
manifests something.
Yeah, it's like ChatGPT. Most people would know about ChatGPT. It's a wonderful system where you can write research papers, you can get your copywriting headlines, you can summarize things, you can get answers, you can have it write papers or have it write basically content. But there's several things that generative AI can be broken down into as well. Text is one, which is the ChatGPT. Perplexity, which I use a lot as well, which is an interesting ChatGPT competitor. There's also images. So you've got programs like Midjourney, DALL-E 4 maybe. But if you remember the Twitter drop maybe 2 years ago now of an astronaut riding a horse in space. So that was basically, did you see that one on Twitter? Are you familiar with that? No?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
So basically, someone just put in astronaut riding a horse in space in text into DALL-E 2, or it was DALL-E 1 at the time. And basically, it came up with a beautiful image of an astronaut sitting on a white horse. I don't know if he's on the moon or he may just be, basically floating around in space. So that was kind of one of the first times where you had a text-based image creating software. I use it for, I use Midjourney actually, not DALL-E 3 or 4, because I find it can produce photorealistic images that then you can use basically in anything you want. It's copyright free. If you're using images from Midjourney, you don't own the copyright, but you can also use everyone else's images, but you're not going to have any copyright strikes on you because no one owns the images. So you can actually produce images that are as beautiful as, some photographs of a city, So you have this ability to, I think I pay $10 a month, and you have this ability to, create unlimited images almost for that cost. Then one of the interesting things you can do with those images is you can take it into something like Pika or Runway AI and actually convert those images into video. So you can, take like one of the examples I use is basically we have a newscaster who, when you want to do personalization, sometimes you want to, if I want to advertise, someone wants to advertise to me, it's probably better to put a white person, whether it's a man or a woman, as the thing that I'm looking at, right? As the video announcer, let's say, or the newscaster. So what generative AI is now able to do is to take an image of a woman, let's say, and make her an African-American woman, an Asian woman from, let's say, Southeast Asia, an Asian woman from Korea, or maybe a man, or a white person, a white woman, a white man, or a white woman. So you can create all of these images on Midjourney and then put them into something like Runway, and then you can add in the lip syncing feature. So you can have them basically be a newscaster, or we work with sports books. So we were talking about maybe using them as a sportscaster who can, talk about the upcoming match, or can talk about the games that have been finished. And once again, you can do it in multiple languages because all of this lip syncing can be done in, probably the top 8 or 10 languages in the world, because these systems are basically just reading text in the language that whatever you're inputting. So those are really pretty cool. And once again, you don't have to pay for any of the production aspect of things. It's just basically you typing in, and you could probably, create in 8 hours what would take, I don't know, a week normally. And you don't have to deal with actors. You don't have to deal with editors. You don't really have to deal with sound people. If you've worked in production, it's a whole production, as they say. But movies can have 100 people working on a set. So that's taken away. There's a new system also that came out called Sora, which is owned also by OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT. And did you know who Tyler Perry is?
I do.
Actor. Yeah. So he owns a studio in Atlanta, and he was going to do an $800 million expansion, and he canceled it maybe 6 months ago because he saw what was happening on the generative AI video front, and basically he's looking at, $800 million to build, I think it was 12 sound stages that he wasn't really sure would be worthwhile if everyone can just create, you know, and some of the stuff, if you look at Sora, and you look at some of the images and the video, I mean, it's stunning stuff. It'll be a paragraph of directions and paragraph of text and instructions, you know, and one of the images of a woman a woman in Japan, a young woman in Japan walking down the street in one of the, you know, at night in one of the
Yeah,
famous
I've seen that.
districts of that, you know. But it's also like she's got sunglasses on, she's got red lipstick on her lips, and you know, it's quite amazing that you can just produce something like that just from putting in a text prompt, as they call it. So there's that, and then we do have some clients also are using the generative AI software capabilities. So you can basically, it helps you write software, it helps you decode it, it helps you catch problems, it helps optimize it, and so it can be a, you know, a software developer's best friend in many ways, and cut down on development time. So, and then there's also elements where animation, it's helping animation. So video game makers are using it to help them build their 3D environments. And then there's also a lot of translation capabilities. Like I was in no, what was it? I was in a Chinese city, Ningbo, a couple of years ago. It was like right before COVID. So it was about 2017 or 18. And it was a smart city conference. And they had some Nobel Prize winning economist, or I think he taught at Stanford. But basically, he was delivering a presentation in English, and you were getting the Chinese translation instantly. And it wasn't because they had his text beforehand. It was done live. So it was once again pretty impressive stuff. So all of those things are, you know, going on. And now, you know, we have a situation where AI, a lot of these software companies have claimed it can do everything you need a software to do, which a lot of times isn't quite true. It's a little more complicated than that. But, you know, we are reaching a point now where generative AI is exploding in the solutions that are available, and billions are being spent by the software companies like Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, and all the major players who have tons of money. So they're all looking at this as their next, you know, the next kind of huge money maker. So they're really throwing all kinds of money at it. Not, you know, plus what's going on in the VC world with all these new AI companies as well that are, you know, a lot less AI than they claim to be, but you know, that's kind of the nature of business. So yeah, so that's kind of what, you know, the kind of an overview and a wrap up of what we're doing. And yeah, but it's a very interesting field, you know. So I write a lot about it, and I write both books, nonfiction books, but also quite a lot. Once or twice a year, I write a article for a peer-reviewed English journal, the Journal of Social Media, Mobile and Social Media Marketing, and then a few other journals that are about marketing and AI and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a fascinating field to be in, and no lack of interest on the part of customers and potential customers. So
Yeah, that's a good overview of AI. Here's a few questions based on that. Go back to the beginning. With the casino type of AI, is that type of AI called something else besides generative? What's the name of that type?
that would more be that was facial recognition technology more than anything. So,
Okay. I
but
wonder
they're
if
also,
they will get
go
to a
ahead.
point where you can take a person that's come to a casino for a certain amount of time, they develop a profile for them, and then the casino sends them a bill every month and says, had you have played based on your history, you would have won or lost this month. Here's either your money or here's a bill. I think that would probably take out the fun of the gambling part, which is probably what the gambler is after, is that certain something when you're risking things. But for the busy gambler, that may be an option.
It could be, yeah. It does take the fun away. But the funny thing, the big difference between going on a casino floor in Las Vegas and going on a casino floor in Macau is they don't have fun there. It's very serious for them, and weirdly, they play the one game that there's no thought. I mean, with blackjack, at least you can think. Like, blackjack, it's like, okay, this is I double down here. I shouldn't hit on this if they're showing that. But baccarat is just, it's not like that. It's just they deal the cards according to what's been, they give you no choice.
Yeah.
So it's weird because the Asians, you would think, are normally so analytical. But when you get on a floor in Macau, there aren't all of the waitresses walking around offering free drinks, right? There's just a little old lady pushing a cart of tea, right? So they save all their drinking for another time. They go to the KTVs or they go to bars after they're gambling, but it's almost like a morgue in many ways. So it's kind of odd. But yeah, no, I get where you're going. I almost see like that would almost be interesting for sports betting too, because we work with some sports betting companies as well. And I know that's taken off in America because of the legalization over the last, 5 to 10 years. But it's almost like that person who has the 6 numbers that they play every week for the lottery, right? And then 1 week they don't play. Those are the ones that come up, but
Yeah.
they basically regret it for the rest of their life. But it would be like, yeah, you missed on your Super Bowl last year. Your Super Bowl, pick would have made it this year. So, but anyway, are you a gambler yourself?
I am not. I'm
Okay.
not. I mean, I play the like Powerball or Mega Millions every now and then if I'm in the grocery store and the machine's there, with the idea that it's basically allegedly the money goes to education. So that's the way I support education, with a little bit of chance at something, but also I think it's more of just the time to sit and think about what you would do if you did win. But
Yeah.
I imagine it would be different if you did win. I'd like to give it a try, see what would happen if I won, but I don't
What's funny,
have.
during the Olympics in Paris, there was a joke that whenever the Americans won gold, they would basically thank God, right? And then whenever the British won gold, they would thank the National Lottery, because the National Lottery is what was funding, all of the money. All the money went to basically the athletes and the athletes coaching and places places where they would basically work on their games. So, but yeah, but the other thing about gambling is it's not just a human trait. It's like they've done studies that have proven that both pigeons and monkeys, when given the choice of basically hitting a lever, that one of them will give them a consistent pellet and the other one will be, it'll be a random big win. But when they get more pellets on the individual push, they always choose the random. So it's something within human beings and animals in general that just love that aspect of, getting away from the drudgery and the sameness, I guess. So, but
Yeah, it's that connection with chance. I always think that gravity is a big force in existence and chance is a big force in existence. But
I agree.
maybe a little more philosophy. On the topic of a horse in space with an astronaut, I would hope that picture would have had a Pegasus, because I understand the wings aren't going to work so well in space, allegedly. But
You know what?
maybe
It
if it was
wasn't.
a unicorn Pegasus, then maybe
Yeah.
the
No,
unicorn
it was.
applied some sort of ethereal thrust.
I like your mythological twist, but no, it was just a horse. It was just a white horse with an astronaut, a full decked out astronaut with his helmet on. But yeah, I'll send you the link. It was dropped on it was dropped on Twitter almost 2 years ago now, which is kind of amazing because it's a technology that really has kind of exploded. And maybe I just say that because I use it in a minute. But I was in Cebu last week doing a presentation at a sports betting and casino conference, and there was quite a lot of interest in it. People do understand that it can simplify labor issues, because you don't need a book designer, you don't need a copywriter, you don't need um, an artist as much as you used to. So, for Asia, that in many ways doesn't have the ability to hire people of quality that you do in America, that is kind of important for, because I go to some casinos. I went to one in Cambodia, and they were like, oh yeah, we get people, our staff come from the provinces, and they don't even have a high school education. So, to have this technology that's so simple to use is very, very helpful, because, they still get pretty sophisticated customers. So they still have to, have decent marketing. So it is helpful in that way.
On the marketing side of it, I would think instead of trying to approximate a person, like you were talking about, if you're advertising to a white male, then you want the advertiser, the picture of it to be a white male talking to them. In general, that's probably correct. But I think what would be better is if you used a camera and then you made a picture of that person talking to themselves about it. I think that's more direct marketing. And
you could do that.
Maybe you call it subconscious or something.
Yeah, no, you could do that. There's a Synthesia, I believe is the name of the company, where you can upload your picture and they'll create an avatar of you. It won't be realistic, but it'll be actually it is pretty realistic. So yeah, so you could have that. But in some ways, I think
on a billboard in passing, you walk by something, you look at it, and then it's you in the picture advertising whatever that thing is advertising.
Yeah. And in the early days of email marketing, it was very much getting the name, like putting someone's name or someone's even to the point of, I graduated from UCLA. So when I see a UCLA hat or a UCLA, I'm much more likely to buy a UCLA sweatshirt, if someone was who's that? There's a company that sells a lot of t-shirts and stuff, but a website, but that and that way you market. Personalization marketing is basically where we are headed. So yeah,
I would think for fashion it would be good, because you could just show you in whatever fashion they wanted to sell. Like, here's a new hoodie, this is what I like this hoodie, and you're like, wait a minute, that's me.
And they do have, like, if you go to in Hong Kong, AliCloud or Alibaba did have mirrors where you would be standing in front of the mirror, and then you could basically change into a different, a shirt or a blouse or whatever they were selling in that store. So you could look at it on you rather than, trying it on. So yeah, so that was kind of, good stuff. And then they have mirrors for colors, for women's lipstick. So you can actually see the person in the mirror and then have them try the lipstick color without actually applying it. So you don't have to waste all of that stuff. And you can also, then look at the colors and see which one works on you. So
yeah, that makes it easier shopping at home.
It does. Yeah, indeed. So yeah, and I mean, all of this is quite expensive on the side of the, companies that are building it up. But in many ways, it's the thing that gets them to be different, right? I shouldn't say a lot. Some retailers are, like, even in the casino, they're talking about being able to peg, once someone walks into a casino, they want to be able to peg who it is, so that the host then is made aware that so-and-so has just entered the building, right? And there's many ways where those machines, or, what they offer and what's going on the floor is all, used, and is all of manipulating it's all attempting to manipulate your emotions so that you will put more money into the slot machine, or you will go to. And it's funny because the casino floors in Macau, they do have, you do get a table, a baccarat table that suddenly gets hot, and it will be. It's a unique game in that when you're playing blackjack, it's just you versus the dealer. With baccarat, it can be 20 people on that table against the dealer. So you get a very almost like a pack-like mentality where everyone's kind of betting the same thing. So when things go well, it becomes very good and it gets very loud and it gets very exciting. But when, obviously they can lose as well. And obviously the casinos are fine with it all. But it's very interesting to see because, you do have that ability to, which you do get a little bit with craps, because craps everyone can play, the pass or no pass line. But with baccarat, it's a little bit, it's a different kind of situation. But once again, it's all about getting people in the mood to give more of their money up. So
Well, it seems like a casino is just a more concentrated version of society, which is all a manipulation.
Indeed.
And you look at nature. Nature is like, come eat this fruit, smell this flower, take the pollen from this to the other. I mean, everything's trying to get the attention of something else.
Yes.
So
come to my Venus flytrap.
Yeah. Right. How do you see the difference between people and AI? Like, is AI just like a smarter person, smarter in the sense of it has a bigger database to draw from and it can do it more quickly?
Well, there's an interesting problem with AI. It's like, it's very good if you give it, there's a couple of different AIs, but if you want it to solve a certain problem, you can get it, and then machine learning is basically, getting the computer to come up with an answer by itself in many ways, right? But you can tell it you want to solve a particular problem, and it can be it can be extremely good at that, better than human beings in many ways. But one of the problems with it is you can't ask a model to solve a problem, let's say trying to find out the protein breakdown of this DNA or whatever. But then you can't ask it to do something else. It's like, it's built this model that's going to do this one thing, and that's all it can do. So I think we're a long way away from AGI, which is the ability for the systems to basically act like a human brain. I'm not sure we can ever really get there.
AGI being artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, exactly.
But so then AI is just like a slice of humanity right now, as it is, because it's this narrow focus, and then eventually if you can put those all together. But isn't that how people learn? I mean, you couldn't take a person that didn't know how to sequence a protein and get them to sequence protein.
But they're saying that a child of about 3 or 4 is able to figure out what's going on in the world a lot better than any computer system. Like, you have right now, we're spending fortunes are being spent on driving, self-driving, right? And some of it's working. Some in Waymo, I think, is doing some stuff. Tesla's not doing, I don't think, so well. But the way I think it's a 4-year-old, the way the 4-year-old sees their world is a lot better than any AI system has been able to recreate at this point. They just are we understand things, even we understand the context, and I'm not sure of the right word, but we understand what's going on around us in ways that machines still have not been able to, and may not be able to at all. So I do think there's something, I don't know what it is, but the problem, you're taking a system based on silicon chips, which is, and yes, there'll be neural networks that are designed to mimic what's going on in our brains, but they don't really, they can only do it to a crude level. So I'm not sure. And now they're saying that they're not sure that they can get much further on that front. So I mean, there's a lot going on, and I'm not an expert on the people like Jan LeCun. I do follow on Twitter, who's got an interesting take on all of this, but he still thinks we're quite a bit of ways away from AGI, and he's also not even worried about the whole threatening aspect of AI. So because he just doesn't, human beings are really the only animal that has a cruelty aspect to it. Like, if you look at the history of humanity, it's just a history of cruelty in many ways, right? Even to this day, we're having autocrats, basically starting wars and murdering people for no reason. And his feeling is,
so you're
he's not
saying that
sure.
ants have a reason to start a war and it's not as cruel as human war?
Yeah, I think they do, because their reason for war would be maybe food related or survival related, whereas we kill for a lot of other reasons than just survival and food. We don't kill each other for food, but there's a
Survival is a
level.
pretty big topic. You could
Yeah,
cover a lot with the umbrella of survival. Even if
indeed,
you
indeed.
were an evil person, as we would define it, then you're trying to survive as an evil person. So you're going to do things to survive that way.
Yeah, but someone like Hitler, he wasn't about survival. He was about over basically destroying his enemies and taking over countries and
Which
doing
was
things.
his survival. No?
Well, not in the end, but
I know, but I mean, that's what he was going for. Just like an ant colony would be trying to survive that could be destroyed, or bees versus the classic murder hornets and all that. I don't know. I
yeah,
think there's cruelty in animals for sure.
no, there is
Certainly
cruelty in
nature.
animals, but yeah,
We
yeah, yeah,
just don't
no,
call it that.
nature. Yeah, nature in many ways is quite cruel, but I don't think it's cruel in the way human beings are cruel. I don't think there's a thought behind. Maybe thought is the wrong word. Behind what those murder hornets are doing. I mean, that's very much. I mean, that is survival of. Because I have seen some of those interesting where the bees are attacking the murder hornets.
And
Is,
heat them
is
up.
that the one
Yeah.
you're talking about? Yeah. So, but that's protecting the queen, I think.
It's survival. No?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if that's the program. I mean, if we're all programs, how can we tell that we're not some sort of
Matrix.
Yeah, some sort of,
In the
well,
matrix.
I think we probably are. Whether you call reality or reality a construct or whatever, it's the same thing. It's just different
It's
words, I
definitely a
think.
construct. Yeah. It's definitely a construct in our mind.
How do we know we're not AGI?
That's a good question. I have a minor in philosophy, so we studied a little bit of that. If I can remember now, Descartes, the malevolent God or something. Yeah, no, it's and that's honestly, that's one of the most interesting aspects of all of this technology, because we are getting to a point where, because you are getting to a point where some of the technology is so good that it does mess with your reality. Like if you go into, I actually did some work at a company called ShowScan, and it was a competitor of IMAX, like 20 something years ago, right? And it was by the guy who designed he did the special effects for Blade Runner. He was actually the owner of the company. So he was doing 60 frames a second and those massive screens, like what you see on IMAX today. And you walk into some of those things, and I mean, it's a level of reality. I remember sitting in a chair, and they were showing. It was a kind of like a roller coaster, but you're sitting in a chair in the roller coaster, and your stomach is dropping out, and you do feel it, and they had the fans blowing on you as well. But now, it's a whole other level. It's a whole other level I haven't used the new headset from Apple, but I heard, it's quite a. Have you played around with that at all?
I haven't.
Okay. So, I mean, apparently the visuals in there are quite stunning as well. So, but no, I don't know. Is there a way to prove or disprove
It's
that?
funny.
Uh,
It's funny to think that we're a type of intelligence, saying that another type of intelligence like us can't be created. But then here we are.
yeah,
Seems
but maybe
like
that's
maybe the AI is in the still the embryonic state. And it just feels like if it ever makes it to that point of whatever it is, we are different from it. If it takes that chance aspect, or if it looks at the cruelty side of things, or whatever, if that happens, that it's going to surpass us so quickly that we won't even know it.
yeah. And I guess degradation too on the cruelty side of things. It's like I don't know if there's another animal that does that to its fellow being. So, um, like your murder hornet thing's a little different. It'd be like murder hornets doing something to other murder hornets rather than those bees. But anyway, it's an
Have you
interesting.
read Watership Down?
Yeah, yeah. When I went to boarding school in England, and I read it a long, long time ago. Yeah,
Those
indeed,
those
indeed.
rabbits were mean to each other.
Yeah, but that's a novel, right? That was
Hold on, that's not real.
anthropomorphic. So, but Animal Farm as well, wasn't that? That was also a bunch of cruel
Mm.
animals. So,
Mm.
but that was showing basically with human characteristics.
What do you
So,
think about this idea that a human is very helpless for a long time, but then becomes maybe more advanced than other animals as far as we know? Maybe that's a self-centered way to look at it, but just take that as it is. So maybe the AI is different than a human, as in the development of it takes a lot longer than it takes for a human, but then it becomes something much greater than a human
no,
after
no,
it matures.
yeah, and I think you're gonna have like AlphaGo a couple years ago beat the best Go, the game Go,
Hmm.
the Chinese game Go. Lee Sedol was beaten by AlphaGo maybe like 6 years ago or something. So they do get to a point where, and I think Lee Sedol and some of the other players who played against it said it was coming up with, ideas that were so far ahead of what we could come up with, and we would never have thought of. And I think, that's a particularly interesting strategic game or game of strategy that has so many different options that it's almost impossible for a human really to figure it out. And the machine was just, and the machine, didn't use the methodology that Big Blue was using to beat that Russian chess master. I can't remember his name now. From the 80s or maybe even the 90s. So it was a whole new way. It really was AI and machine learning and very clever stuff. But I think the problem is, our brains are very, very sophisticated things, and I do think, you know, they they are probably the most complicated thing in what we know of the world. And you know, I just think a technology that works in a different format is just going to have problems trying to, recreate what we have. But it could, yeah, quantum computing is probably not too far around the corner, and that's going to take what would take 40 years for a current system to crunch the numbers. It'll do it in a few seconds. So maybe when that level of number crunching comes in, um, maybe that can solve some of these problems. But but I don't know. I'm not I'm not too worried about it destroying humanity, um, but it is fascinating technology, and I think it can help us out in a lot of ways. And I think the beauty of it, more than anything, is it does take a lot of the drudgery out of work. It takes a lot of the boring parts of what you might have to do as a, as a editor or as a photographer. So it can take away all the boring stuff and then leave you with the time to focus on the creative aspect, which is kind of what human beings want to do anyway, right? I mean, the whole the whole goal in life is to use the mental capacity of your brain, the higher order parts of our brains, and rather than the labor manual part, which can be very very tedious. And what they have seen, and when they do studies, human beings, towards the after an hour or two, they get bored and they make mistakes. Whereas with AI, it's going to work just as hard in the first minute as it does in the, 21st or hour, 121st minute. So I think that's kind of, and I think on the flip side, it really can open up the creativity aspect of things too. So you're going to come up with a lot more ideas because you don't have to spend so much money for each idea that you're, creating.
Yeah, eventually you just put a book in and say, show me a storyboard about this book, or give me
Yeah.
an hour movie about it, or a 2-hour movie, or whatever.
Yep. Like with Midjourney, what you do is you put in your text, and then within a minute, it'll give you 4 options, and you get to choose. You can, then you can play off of any of those 4 options, toss out the ones that aren't any good. But it'll give you, from what I've seen, pretty close representations of what I'm looking for. And I read and put this in an article recently, like Mercedes-Benz is now, what they want to do, and they may even be doing it, is they'll do obviously if you buy a high-end Mercedes, it's quite a bit of money. So, they have a clientele who's, that you want to impress. So what they'll do is they'll take a picture of the client and then take a bunch of pictures of their latest models, and then basically tell the text to image system, put so and so behind the wheel of model whatever it is, and have him drive across or have him be driving across, let's say, the Salt Lake Flats in Utah. And so within a few minutes, they can pull out a almost photorealistic image of a customer of theirs sitting behind a car that will be, that's basically rolling off the production line. And what they were saying was, we used to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a team to go to these, famous places that we've all seen on these television commercials for decades, and basically just get it in generative AI. And suddenly you've got a personalization book that, as we were talking before, it's got you looking back at you, So yeah. It's great stuff. Very
That
clever.
leads you down the road of then thinking, wait a minute, how much of this stuff is actually real? A real place you could go to, and if you go to it, are you actually there and it's real, or are you in a program? It's strange. Like maybe this is just some sort of advanced video game for some other whatever of ourself, whatever that is, outside of this altogether.
We're flirting with the line, that's for sure, a lot more than ever before.
What do you think the reason for existence is?
That's a pretty good question.
Just for a lighter question.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know. That's a hard one to answer. It's funny. I was in Cebu last week, and they have a church there. Like, if you know much about the Philippines, it was basically conquered by the Spaniards a few times. Like in the 1500s, Magellan landed here, and he, basically met with the Lapu-Lapu chief of Lapu-Lapu, And I guess they were okay and they were friendly for a while, but then they got into a fight, and it was like, I don't know, 500 to 1. At one point, they had 50 sailors, and they all got basically just murdered. But another Spaniard then came along, and I don't know what his name but he actually was the one that conquered the Philippines. And there's actually a church in Cebu, which is the first church that then, because it's a Catholic country, so that was the first church where Catholicism was actually brought to the Philippines. And now everywhere you go in the Philippines is basically it's a Catholic country, and there are churches everywhere, and you see nuns everywhere. And but in terms of my own spirituality, it's an interesting topic, but I don't know if I want to go too deep into it.
All right, check it out. Here's what I think. I think
Fire away.
that the reason we're here is for perspective and experience, and that maybe there's a good and a bad. Certainly, it feels like it from the human perspective that there's good things and bad things, but maybe we're all here just to experience emotion and see things from all these different perspectives. You could back out of that a little more and say, what if we are all part of the same thing? And the reason we're here is to be able to understand these small little slices of perspective rather than being all one, knowing everything about all of us together.
Mhm.
That if you were an all-powerful being and knew everything, could you know what it's like to feel helpless or all these other emotions? You're all powerful, so you should be able to, but maybe this is how you go about that. If we are all part of a giant one consciousness or machine, you break it all apart. And that's why you have all these different religions that say, treat others how you want to be treated, or,
Mhm.
you bow to the divine and someone else, namaste, all that. That when you think, well, that's me, that's we're the same thing, just disconnected somehow and can't see the connection from where we are right now. But then you get to feel all these emotions of the fairness, unfairness, love, hate, all this stuff that humanity offers
Yeah.
that you wouldn't feel otherwise.
Yeah, and I like that. And have you read there's a book called Hero with a Thousand Faces. Have you heard of that book?
I haven't.
Joseph Campbell. And the interesting thing about him is if you like the first Star Wars series, the ones that came out in 1977, Joseph
Mhm.
Campbell was basically, his argument is there's one story, one myth of man and challenging nature and basically going on what he called the hero's journey. And if you watch the first Star Wars, which I was a huge fan of because it came out when I was about 13 or 14, so I remember seeing it in England in a theater there up in Hebden Bridge, I think it was. But you had a story basically. If you can break down that story in basically he goes on this journey and he has to learn things along the journey. He meets certain types of characters, whether they're mentors teaching him things or the Han Solo type characters who are of questionable loyalty, let's say, and obviously the love interest, at least for Han in that case. And then but the fight between good and evil. And what Joseph Campbell, he was a philosopher and a religious scholar. And what he did was he went to all these and studied all these different religions and found that they all had the similar hero's journey, hero's quest, um, story to basically teach people. And so basically what his argument was, it has to be something in the collective unconscious because these were all ancient societies that never saw each other, so whether it was Indians in America, Indians in India, or the Europeans, or even the Chinese, they were all writing very similar mythological stories about characters that were going through very similar things. And it's actually, if you I'm a screenwriter as well. Haven't got any produced yet, but that doesn't stop me from trying. So you have that element where a lot of screenwriters are taught to kind of use the hero with a thousand faces,
Okay.
hero's journey concept. So even to the point where, if you remember Star Wars, there's a scene where you reject the call, and then with Luke Skywalker, he rejects the call, and then he goes back to his where he lives and it's been destroyed, right? So then he has to then go on the call, and that's when he joins Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then tries to save the his world from the rebel, or save the rebels from the
The
Empire.
Empire.
Yeah, so it's been too long. I haven't watched much of the newer stuff. I don't like. I do like those first three, or at least the
As a
first two.
little aside, I would say check out Rogue One. I think is
Rogue One.
probably the best Star Wars movie I've seen, and I don't even know if they consider it a Star Wars movie in that sense. That it's an excellent connection between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi that explains some things quite nicely, and I think it was rewritten so many times. Like the trailer is different than the actual movie. Like there's things in that you go, wait a minute, this isn't in the movie at all. This is not how it unfolded. But it, it I look at it as more of a war movie, and it could be a little grittier, but it's pretty good as far as Star Wars things go. Star Wars lost me the most when I think it was The Force Awakens or something. One of those is the last one I saw, that they're in space and they're dropping bombs in space. And I thought, well, this could take a sentence or some explanation as to why you're dropping things in space onto a planet. Maybe it has a different type of gravity or something, but they're going for the World War II vibe, and you're in space, opening doors. They don't have a problem breathing, and they're dropping bombs. And I'm thinking, man, they've broken their own rules. If you're going to establish some rules, you got to follow them.
Absolutely.
In whatever type of reality you're in, whether it's this or something else. But
yeah,
that's where Star Wars lost me.
Yeah, and Rogue One I've heard good things about too, so I will check that out. But some of the other ones, it's kind of, yeah. It did well as a, they lost their way, and I don't know if they'll ever be able to find their way back. But
somebody needs to just say, okay, from this point forward, don't worry about all these. We're redoing them. Yeah. Maybe with some AI, somebody can program something into,
Well, the interesting thing what they were doing with a lot of those shows was it's just projection. So they were animating. So they have like a sound stage that it's kind of like a big circle thing. So they're able to. It's actually fantastic technology, but basically they weren't green screening it. They were projecting the background on there, so it gave you the ability to do shots that were 360, or some very complex shots that would have been difficult with green screen technology. And it's the reality, like I did work on a couple of movies many years ago because I was working in production in Hollywood. And I worked on one which was Supernova. It was one of the biggest bombs ever. But James Spader was in it. I think Angela Bassett was in it, and they had this big soundstage at the airport in LA, and it was a spaceship. And I don't know, Walter Hill was involved, and he was actually, I think, the director at one point. But it was just basically another Aliens wannabe, film that didn't really do well and came out and bombed and almost took down MGM with it. So it's a weird industry in that they just love to swing for the fences with huge amounts of money, and it'll go on for a while and it'll work, and then boom, they strike out.
Well, they might be getting away from that hero's journey. They didn't take the example of the Odyssey and other things, and they've gotten off to try to program a society to think a certain way instead of just go with the base programming of oh, here's the hero and this is how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the good point is there's so much content now. Streaming is just, kind of taken over, and they're spending a lot of money on content. Well, they were before COVID. They pulled it back a little bit, but still, there's an enormous amount of very good TV, I think. Movies
With
less so. Yeah, go ahead.
with writing, where do you do most of your writing?
In Macau, uh, um, I wrote a novel set in Macau that was about a white guy who comes to Macau. He's an American, moves there, gets involved with money laundering, and we have these things called junkets, which are kind of like VIP, high-end VIP rooms that get the high rollers from China to come and play in their own room. But it's in the casinos, so it's basically the dealers are the casino people, but these VIP are brought in by the junkets. So, and so I basically I do write at home, and as I said earlier, I like to write in the morning when my mind is strong, and then in the evenings I'll do the editing, or sometimes I like to go to the sauna and sit there, just get a little hot, and I find the editing in there is quite good. It expands the mind and does make me come up with some creative ideas. So yeah, but I don't have, the good thing for me at least is I don't have any writer's block problems. I've been able to, I'm working on a couple of new novels right now, and I'm always working on nonfiction content as well, whether it's just an article or content from my website or some, a book on its own. So I have self-published a couple of books as well, some of the AI stuff. So yeah, and my novels do intersect a little bit with AI as well. So not sci-fi stuff, but some of the technology I've seen and used do pop up in my, like the facial recognition stuff that was used in my novel, The Dead Ship Syndicate, and I think there were some other references to AI as well. So yeah, I mean, and being in China, there's a lot of interesting stuff and some questionable stuff being done with AI there too. So it does give me kind of a good vision into it. Like I mentioned the Ningbo thing going a few years ago, and it was funny looking at the technology there, and you could see there was some Chinese little robot that looked exactly like the Boston Scientific dog, right? And so you had a lot of technology that looked like it was purely taken, IP theft, straight up IP theft, but some interesting 3D TVs. What were the other ones? Some very, they spent quite a bit of money on some of the dashboards and some of the technology, some of the drone technology, and so it was interesting. But it was, you kind of look at stuff and you go, how did you get? Why does this look so similar to something I've seen, American or European companies do? And if you look at the EV world right now, the Chinese companies have really, there's way too many of them. They all look the same. I don't know. It's like you can see a Xiaomi just came up with a replica of some Porsche and of some EV Porsche. It was just a complete replica, selling for maybe a third of the price. And you're just going like, these cars are driving at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. You can't have technology. It's not a phone. It's dangerous, to put this kind of stuff on. They do it. And, I think they had like 90 EV companies in China right now. And most of them are not going to make money. So anyway, just to go off on a little bit of a EV tangent there. So
You mentioned your website. What's the best way for people to be able to follow your work?
So I actually am, I'm on Amazon.com as an author. So you can go there, just put in Andrew W. Pearson. There's about 7 or 8 books on there.
Okay.
Intelligentsia.co is my company website. So INTELLIGENCIA.co. And I'm also on, what are my other places? I am on Instagram, and yeah, there's contact information on the website, and there's also quite a lot of articles that you can download there as well. The book, if you send me an email, I'm more than happy to share it with you as a PDF. And the books, they are the AI Marketer, the AI Casino, the AI Sports Book, the AI Retailer, the AI Hotelier, and I did a predictive analytics airline as well. So those are all, and then the Dead Ship Syndicate, which is the fiction thriller about a twin brother who he thinks his twin brother has tried to kill him. So,
And that's I was looking also at AndrewPearson.com. So you have all that on
yeah,
there as well, right?
AndrewWPearson.com. Yeah.
Andrew. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so
Well, that information will be in the show notes so people can check that out if they would like to.
perfect.
And thank you very much for your time. Do you have any thoughts in closing or anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't?
No, I was just going to say just about the book. I was flying into Manila one time, and I was interested because I remember seeing something on TV about the revolution, the People's Revolution in the Philippines. And I remember landing at that airport. The airport's called Ninoy Aquino Airport, and it's the only airport in the world named after someone who was murdered on his tarmac. And as I was landing, I thought, that's a very interesting opening line in a book, basically to have someone think about landing at this airport while also recognizing that someone's out to kill him. So the book uses a lot of real stories. Like there was another story about a bunch of hitmen in China, and apparently one guy outsourced his hit to another Chinese guy, who outsourced his hit to a third guy, who then outsourced his hit to the fourth guy. And the fourth guy was so offended by the small amount of money that he was getting that he turned them all into the police. And it was just, these stories I thought were so ridiculous that actually very much within the vein of someone like Elmore Leonard. So I kind of took these funky stories. There's other stories about a floating casino in Macau being funded by the Norwegian government, and so it's a very funky little fun, with some characters that are based on some real people I met along the way as well. Some very interesting Italian actor who hired me to write a script, who had a thing for American country music. So we're driving in the lake industry or by the lake area and he's got his hat on. And he's listening to he's got his cowboy hat on, listening to Johnny Cash as he's driving along in his little BMW. It was very cute, and he looked like Mussolini. He's like from this area in where Mussolini's from, if you know that part of the. But it was a spitting image of this guy. So I've had some interesting experiences, and I thought I had to put them down into some stories along the way, just so that we can document everything. So, but yeah, no, this has been very interesting. I liked the existential questions that we were.
Yeah, you got to think about that some more. I mean, philosophy guy, AI.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see what you churn out in the deep thoughts in the sauna about existence and why we're here.
Well, I've had a few interesting conversations in there too, and you get some colorful characters. So yeah, there's an older guy who he speaks very good Portuguese. He's Chinese, and but he'll go off on some tangents, and you learn how people think. That he was all like, "Oh, Ukraine needs to give up," and I was like, "No, I don't think they do." But Anyway, we all have, as you say, we all have our own, take on things, and we're never going to get it right, because there'll be things that we don't quite understand. But I do think there is good and there is evil, and we need to be very well aware of that and do our best to keep
and
the good.
experience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got those links in the show notes, and thank you very much for your time. I'll talk to you on the other side of this musical exit.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thank you.